Welcome to Blood Moon Milk, the astrology show that comes out every new moon and full moon to help guide you on your mindfulness, meditation, and manifestation journey. I'm your host, Aurora, and if you're new here, welcome. I've been studying astrology since 2008, and I've started this show back in 2018 to help you and me to use the stars as a way to build a better life and follow our dreams, our passions, and to do all the things that we want to do in life. This episode is all about the eclipse that's happening today. I've been very busy, unexpectedly very, very busy, and the podcast just kind of fell to the bottom of my task list, unfortunately. So if you're impatient and you were wondering where stuff was, I'm sorry. I was traveling and I just started a new job. So all of those things combined to this having to be put ever so slightly on the back burner, but I'm here for you now. And I hope if you are watching this or listening to this after the eclipse, that it can help bring some clarity because eclipses are destiny portals in a way. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in and start sharing my screen, and we can look at what is going on in the sky together. All right, so this is the full moon chart for today, which is September 7th, 2025. The full moon will happen at 2:08 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And if you are in the East Coast, or on the East Coast rather, then this chart will more or less be accurate to you. But if you're elsewhere in the world, you might want to adjust the location data to see what rising sign might be on the horizon for your location. Um, Rising signs always play a role. However, today is really about the eclipse. So let's look at that. Let's talk about that. The eclipse will be happening at 15 degrees of the sign of Pisces, 22 minutes. And this is happening because the moon is very close to the north node. And conversely, the south node is very close to the sun. And this is a traditional eclipse formation. So full moon eclipses tend to eclipse things out of our lives. They are very dramatic, sort of severing of something. And so if you have anything at 15 degrees of Pisces or even 15 degrees of Virgo in your chart, you're quite likely to feel this influence on a personal level. So I would encourage you to go and look at where 15 degrees of Pisces is in your chart and just be aware if there are any planets there, if there are any if you have your lunar nodes there, or if your rising sign is there, all of those things could be affected. And so the way it would be affected for you would be specific to you. But it's good to be aware of what house it's falling in, and just take notice because these things can just come out of left field, seemingly, and then manifest in a really dramatic way. And then, but once we kind of understand that, well, the eclipse was hitting, say, our Venus or our Mars sign, we can kind of understand that, well, maybe a person who was a particularly strong feminine influence or a particularly strong masculine influence is suddenly just departing from our lives in one way or another. And the way that this can happen is just like somebody is deciding that they need to change their lives dramatically and move or change jobs or leave relationships, things like that. Also, more dramatic things can happen too, depending on the nuances of an individual's chart. But in general, full moon eclipses really are the end of something, the culmination and dramatic exit of some facet or aspect of our lives. And this could be painful. This could be unforeseen and upsetting. And Pisces is very emotional energy. So I get the sense that this could be quite an emotional and volatile time for many of us. depending on what occurs for us individually. But eclipses are also indicators of societal movements as well, because we are working with the lunar nodes, and the lunar nodes um, sort of act as guides and pointers as to what we should be developing spiritually as a collective on the planet at the time. So the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo are the most difficult nodal placements. The North Node in Pisces asks us to let go of the things that are rigid structures in our lives and to trust that the universe will help us land on our feet. And that is a very difficult sentiment, especially for many of us who are used to the material world and want concrete evidence and proof that things are going to work out. Um, and so it can be very difficult to let go of the things that we are used to, our comfort zones. But that's what the South Node in Virgo represents. It represents the comfort zone of having control, of having everything organized and all the ducks in a row, when really there is some element, some aspect of ourselves that needs to let go and trust in the divine workings of the universe on some level in order for us to land where we really do need to be, not just for our own well-being, but for the collective well-being. Um, and so if you have planets at the in the midpoints of those two signs, or also even Gemini and Sagittarius, because this eclipse would be squaring those placements as well. So just be aware if you have anything at the mutable signs, so that's not only Pisces and Virgo, but also Sagittarius and Gemini at around 15, 16, 18 degrees, maybe all the way down to 13 degrees, you could be feeling this eclipse quite profoundly now. So just keep that in mind. But let's go through and look at the chart for this eclipse and see what good things there might be that could come out of this dramatic ending that we could all be collectively experiencing in one way or another. So Pisces is ruled by the planet Neptune. So let's start with Neptune today. Neptune is in Aries. He's retrograde at 1 degree of Aries. Now, we have a couple of planets who are also retrograde at 1 degree, and they are all acting together in this sort of beautiful, harmonious transformation on a collective level. It's quite exciting. So Neptune represents divine inspiration and connection, creativity, but also divine love, like love that is sort of spiritual on a certain level, or lovers being sort of placed in each other and like fated in a way. There's a gentleness to Neptune's energy, but there's also a nebulousness, a lack of boundaries, a lack of clarity, a certain amount of fogginess comes with Neptune because he rules the oceans, he rules the seas, and the unconscious, our dream state. So there's something about our dreams that could be coming through quite strongly now. And they could also be quite sudden. Things that we might have dreamt or moments that are bubbling up from our subconscious could suddenly be much more present in our waking lives. And I say that because Uranus is retrograde at 1 degree of Gemini, and Uranus is the planet of sudden insight. It's also the planet of revolution and rebellion. So this sudden insight could lead us to, on some level, rebel from circumstances. And then we also have Pluto, who's at 1 degree of Aquarius, also retrograde. So all of these retrograde planets suggest that these are going to be things from the past that haven't been resolved, that have been sort of a work in progress, suddenly bringing insight to the forefront of our minds. And Pluto certainly changes things. He changes things in ways that we could never imagine, in a way that is utterly transformative. And while he's in the sign of Aquarius, he's focused on humanitarian ideals and giving back the collective their power. While he was in the sign of Capricorn, he was helping to consolidate power for big business and government. But while he's moving through Aquarius, he is reversing that polarity and giving the people and the grassroots movements the most power. But he's at the very beginning of his journey. So this is kicking off now, but we'll see more and more of it over the next 20 years or so. So the things that are happening now is this amazing outer planet sextile and trine. So we can see it here. We have Pluto here at 1 degree of Aquarius talking to Uranus and Gemini at 1 degree, also talking to Neptune at 1 degree. Now, Saturn is also very, very close to Neptune. He's worth talking about because that gives structure to things, which is difficult for Neptune to deal with, but absolutely necessary in some ways to give structure to our dreams. However, Neptune's energy will overpower Saturn's eventually. But while Saturn is retrograde and moving backwards into the sign of Pisces, those energies become more and more distinct. But we will be dealing with that conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees next year. So we're getting ready for this whole new beginning, this whole new age to start next year with that conjunction. So I think that everything that's happening now is sort of a wrapping up of things, if you will, that could be quite stunted, quite transformative, and even inspired and dreamy in a way that will bring structure. So if there are endings, dramatic endings during this eclipse for you, because perhaps you have something at 15 degrees of Pisces, then maybe this is actually a good thing in the long term. It can be quite difficult to see those kinds of things in the moment. However, it is important to be able to see possibilities for the future or be open to possibilities in the future that we might not be aware of now. And so there might be a grief process involved, especially if your loss is a profound one, but be open to the room, the vacuum that is left behind, being filled with something that is even in greater alignment for you than what we have been experiencing. Um, Interestingly, we also have Venus at 15 degrees of Leo, which is a hard but minor aspect to this eclipse. So I do think that there will be an element of love, romance, creativity that could be quite difficult for us right now. During this eclipse, Venus moves pretty quickly. The moon moves very quickly too, but she's definitely in the mix here and not in a particularly fun way. She is sort of sesquiquadrate to the or quincunx rather, quincunx to this full moon, which it's an uncomfortable place for her to be. So we're not seeing her acting at her best. The moon in Pisces is emotional, it's creative, it's expressive. And Venus in Leo is also expressive, but she wants the spotlight. She wants the attention. And so there can be this sort of headbutting of energies where Venus in Leo can feel like the moon in Pisces is being a bit of a wet blanket and wanting to have a bit more fun and joyful, carefree moments than this moon in Pisces is willing to give her at the moment. Um, let's also look at Mercury. Mercury is at 10 degrees of Virgo. Now, Mercury rules the sign of Virgo, and he is close to being conjunct. He's within 10 degrees of the sun. So communication, travel, movement, things can all happen very quickly right now. But Mercury is like catching up to the sun. We're not going to have a conjunction of Mercury and the sun for a little while. So the sun is moving on an eclipse, and Mercury is still kind of regaining speed after being retrograde last month. At the end of last month when he went direct. So he's still kind of picking up momentum and speed, recovering from that retrograde. But I do believe we are out of the Mercury retrograde shadow period, because he was retrograde in the sign of Leo. But it still took him a little bit of time to regain that speed. Next, let's look at Mars. Now, Mars has some interesting aspects going on. Mars is square to Jupiter right now, and Mars is in Libra. Jupiter is at 20 or almost 20 degrees, 19 degrees of Cancer, where he's exalted, and Mars is at 20 degrees of Libra. So this is conflict. This is a direct conflict between the desire to expand and nurture and to feel comfort and safe, and the need for diplomacy and balance in your lives. Like, what is it that we're willing to give and take in this sort of seesaw need between expansion, that desire to grow and push and nurture ourselves in that growth process from a philosophical way, while also maintaining healthy boundaries in our relationships. And Mars in Libra is more concerned with the good and the welfare of others and group dynamics than it is for itself. However, Mars in Libra, it wants to make things beautiful, sometimes at the expense of itself. It can be sort of self-deprecating, which is something that Pisces energy shares. Pisces energy can be quite self-sacrificial. And so that North Node in Pisces at 18 degrees is also at a rather harsh angle to Mars right now, because Mars is at 20 degrees of Libra, and that North Node in Pisces is at 18, almost 19 degrees of Pisces. So that's a very tight aspect that is sort of like impeding the flow of that action energy. So if you are feeling sort of blocked from your true calling of being able to let things go and to move on, it could be to some degree that Mars is sort of fumbling the bag a little bit. However, Jupiter is harmonizing with that North Node. Jupiter is at, again, 19 degrees of Cancer, and it is trining the North Node in Pisces at 19 degrees or at 18, 19 degrees, very close. So that can be great. It can feel like there is this huge call to move forward, to make some endings and make some big changes that are nurturing to ourselves, but also helping to bolster the feminine energies in our lives, because Cancer is the sign of the mother and of the moon. And again, the moon will be in the sign of Pisces. So there's a lot of positive energy happening there. And lastly, the last thing I'll talk about is this beautiful trine that's happening between the vertex. The vertex is sort of like a doorway degree. It changes constantly, but the vertex for this eclipse is 27 degrees of Cancer. Now, that is harmonizing perfectly with Vesta at 27 degrees of Scorpio. Scorpio energy is very intense energy, and Vesta in Scorpio is all about intense devotion to a personal cause. So it could be there's some personal crusade or passion that is bringing us opportunities, and it is harmonizing with Saturn down there at 29 degrees of Pisces. So this is a grand water trine, and it's beautifully structured to give us opportunities to create structure for our passions. So I know it's a quick little episode this eclipse. There's a lot more that I could say about it. I'm just running out of time. The eclipse is going to happen soon, and I just wanted to get this out to you as quickly as possible. I'm sorry it's late. I'm not perfect. I'm a human. I have a life, and sometimes things just, get away from me a little bit. But if you want more from me on a regular basis, I suggest you sign up for the newsletter over at bloodmoonmilk.com. I write the daily dose. It is available Monday through Friday. Friday is a weekend edition, so you get my personal insights into the biggest aspects of astrology for that day to help you learn and grow your astrological knowledge one day at a time. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I wish you all the best the stars have to offer.